It's Kawasaki ZH2 time. Alright. How are we doing, everyone? Welcome back. So today we're going to be discussing a little incident that happened about a week ago to me on this bike. I was testing out a new microphone and a new dictaphone, and so I took out the ZH2. It was quite cold. It wasn't that cold, but I don't know, maybe 5 degrees C, something like that. It wasn't freezing, but it was pretty fresh. And I went around a bend, and to try and test the audio, I put a little bit of power down as I was coming out of a corner, and all of a sudden the back end just got away from me, man. The back end just kind of went whoosh like that. And I'm actually quite lucky that the bike was able to correct itself. I didn't put that much power down because I knew that the road conditions weren't perfect, and this bike produces a lot of power. Now, I wasn't recording at the time. I didn't record any video because I wasn't actually out shooting a video at the time, but I do have an audio recording. Right, I'll try and get some speed up going this way. Right. Hey, whoa, blimey. Woo! I didn't even put that much on it, man. That was crazy. Whoa, okay. I gotta be careful, man. At least the bike managed to grip again, though. God, that was insane. I didn't even put that much power down, man. So when something like that happens, it really makes you thank God for traction control. And the funny thing is that on the ZH2, I very rarely run with traction control on. I find that it gets in the way a little too much when I'm putting the power down. I like to feel that front end come up more often than not, but that is to my detriment, because if I had it on, even on the kind of lowest sensitivity level, that wouldn't happen. The back end of the bike wouldn't have slid out. But as I mentioned, luckily I wasn't going too fast and I didn't put down too much power. But you can kind of imagine the situation where if you did put down too much power and then the rear wheel gripped again, well, instead of the bike correcting itself, the back end probably would have gone the exact opposite direction, because naturally in a skid and a power slide you turn into the skid, you turn into the slide, and naturally that is what I did. But I mean, this happens in half a second. It happens so quickly. And then that's how you get high sides. So for those of you who don't know what a high side is, well, that is when the motorcycle basically flips you over the bike. So it can happen from tank slappers, so when the handlebars just go like this, right? When a tank slapper happens, the bike can fall over if you're not careful, and it can launch you into a high side. Most of the time a high side is when the tyres lose grip, but then they gain grip again really quickly, and if you're on the power, that's when the bike does really weird things and it ends up catapulting you off the bike. That's what a high side is. A low side is where, say for example, you are going into a bend and, I don't know, you lean the bike over just a little bit too much and the bike falls over on the side that you're leaning towards. So a high side is significantly worse than a low side in a lot of cases, and because a lot of the time you're in a lot less control of the bike during a high side than you are a low side. And so even though today I'm riding the bike with traction control off in the full power mode, I am still a little bit weary, but to be fair, the road conditions today are so much better than they were that evening. But man, that is why we need traction control on modern bikes. These bikes, they produce so much torque at such low RPMs. I mean, for God's sake, there was one time on this bike where I had just gotten it out of the garage, I just started it up, and as I was putting the kickstand down, because I was locking up my garage, as I was putting the kickstand down, I actually hit the gear lever, and of course, because this bike has got a quick shifter, it went into first gear with no problem whatsoever, and because the bike was idling quite high, because I just turned it on, the rear wheels started coming out from underneath me as well. I mean, these bikes have got so much torque. The ZH2, the ZZR 1400, I mean, the ZZR isn't so bad because it's quite a long wheelbase, so it's much easier to control the torque. But yeah, when you're looking at these muscle bikes, these nakeds with so much torque, you've got to be so damn careful. And that is why traction control is so important on modern bikes. On bikes that, I don't know, are 20 years old even, a lot of them didn't produce as much torque as bikes like this does. You know, my ZX9R, for example, I don't really think it needs traction control because it doesn't actually produce that much torque, at least at the lower end of the rev range. Towards the top end, when it's really getting into its stride and it produces the most amount of power, that's when it produces the most amount of torque, so you haven't really got to worry that much. But with bikes like this, where the torque curve is quite sharp, right at the low end of the rev range, that's when you got to be careful. And to be honest with you, traction control on a motorcycle like this makes so much more sense than half the bikes that traction control is actually featured on. Like, you get traction control these days on the vast majority of bikes above 300cc, and to be honest, they're not really necessary on those bikes in my opinion, at least not for the most part. But we'll get to the reasons why traction control is still important on those bikes, but not quite as important or as imperative as on this bike. And to be fair, I did get a comment recently saying, fair play to you, man, riding that bike on with traction control off in the full power mode, you must be insane. But that's just the way how I enjoy riding this bike. I like to have it balls to the wall, really. Not necessarily because I can utilize all the power, but because I know that power's there, you know. It kind of gives me a bit of a kick, get a bit of an adrenaline rush when you just pull that throttle back and, man, you get everything that the ZH2 has to offer. This bike is arguably one of, I think this is the top 10 most powerful bikes in the world right now, the Kawasaki ZH2. Just an incredible experience, and to be honest, at a really good price range as well. I mean, you are talking big numbers, but definitely cheaper than sport bikes, a lot of top-end sport bikes out there. And arguably you're getting a much better experience because that torque is so accessible even at lower speeds. So this bike for street use makes so much sense to me. Absolutely love it. It is freaking brilliant. But yeah, you've got to have some pretty big cojones on this bike if you're going to do 100% throttle with traction control off in the full power mode, man. Yeah, seriously, this bike just, it shows you no mercy, this bike. It really does. It will wheelie like no tomorrow, and yeah, you really got to be holding on to those handlebars. You've got to take this bike seriously and give it a lot of respect, even more so than bikes like my ZX14, my ZZR 1400 and my ZX9, definitely. Which sounds crazy, but yeah, this is a supercharged bike after all, so it is what it is. But when it comes to smaller bikes, when it comes to bikes that are less powerful, and when it comes to bikes like the ZX9, traction control becomes a lot more applicable when you're going into fast corners, when you're going into fast bends, because you can imagine you're going to get a very similar situation to what I got on the ZH2, where but instead of going into a corner slowly and you're putting the power down, you're going into a corner really fast and putting the power down. So again, you're kind of in that power band of the bike, and in that situation, again, a similar kind of thing can happen where the back end of the bike will come out from underneath you, and if it corrects itself, and it corrects itself really violently whilst you are on the power, well, that's when you're going to be looking at something like a high side. And that is what traction control really is for. It's for those high side events, whereas, you know, under normal circumstances, you would really need to worry about the back end coming out from underneath you and the bike correcting itself. It still happens, even when you're doing moderate speeds. You know, you're doing something like 50 miles an hour, you're hitting a bend quite quick, you put the power down, depending on what gear you're in. If you're in third gear or something like that, second gear, your bike might just have enough power to do a power slide. And to be fair, it looks really cool, doesn't it, when you've got a pro stunt rider doing doing a power slide. It looks friggin' awesome. But I could imagine what it would have looked like to other traffic on the road when I had mine recently. I bet you it looked just friggin' awful. Because of course you go into like damage control mode, you know, panic mode. I mean, to be fair, I didn't panic, but it really did happen quickly, and that's the problem a lot of the time. Your reaction times aren't going to be anywhere near as quickly as traction control kicking in would be. So the bike's only got to lose a little bit of grip for traction control to kick in, but I mean, if you're trying to do that yourself, the rear wheel can probably spin a good 10-20 times before you realize that you've got to come off the power, because that's how quickly the bike could just get away from you. Yeah, just what an incredible experience nonetheless. I mean, yeah, it could have ended really badly, and you've got to be careful in those instances, but man, that's why I'm telling you guys about it today. If the road conditions are wet, if the road conditions look fairly greasy, and you're riding a bike like this, and you normally are like me, where you ride with traction control off, full power mode, turn it on. Put it on the full power mode if you want to, but at least have traction control on, and or maybe even go down a power mode. That might also help you. But really important to keep an eye on what the road conditions are going to be like when you are about to go out on your bike, especially this time of year in the winter. Today, luckily, the roads are really dry, so even though the bike is reading 6 degrees, because the roads are so dry, excuse me, gives you a dry throat this time of year, but it means you can pretty much ride the bike as you normally would. But the issue starts coming when the roads are wet and it's this temperature. The roads become a hell of a lot more unpredictable. The thing is, when I think back at that experience that I had, I think to myself, I really don't know if it was the road conditions or if there was some kind of oil slick on the road. I'm pretty sure there was something on the road that I just so happened to catch. But because my front wheel was absolutely fine, there was no problem with the front end whatsoever. It really held true, and it really saved me. And I suppose another thing to consider here is tire pressures. If you make sure your tire pressures are good and you maintain them, then things like that, again, you're going to be able to correct them a hell of a lot easier than if your tire pressures were off. I can only imagine what it would have been like if my front wheel had a low tire pressure or something like that. Yeah, man, just doesn't bear thinking about, you know. But traction control, as useless as it might seem on the vast majority of motorcycles, it does have its uses when you need it most. Even if you're an experienced rider, you just never know what might happen. Everyone has gone through some kind of oil slick on the road or something slippery on the road that just makes you lose total control of the bike. And it's a split-second decision where, you know, whether or not you save the bike or you don't, whether you go into a high side, a low side, or you don't, and you keep the bike upright. You know, it only takes a split second, and everything can go from being really good to really bad. But, you know, that's why we have these features on these modern bikes. That's why traction control is really important. And as much as it can be a real killjoy when you're on the power of one of these bikes, when you're just riding normally, I really would recommend keeping traction control on, despite the fact that I personally don't like having it on more often than not on any of my bikes. If traction control is a feature, I turn it off the vast majority of times because I don't like it. But at the same time, that's why it's there, for those kinds of occasions where you really need it. But I mean, let me know down in the comment section, everyone, when traction control has saved you. I mean, it can be quite difficult to pick up when traction control is actually doing something on a bike sometimes. But on the ZH2, you really feel it, to be fair, because the bike kind of stutters a little bit. I mean, I'll see if I can, if I put it into, I don't know, like, let's say the full power mode, or the sport mode rather. Let's see if we can hear it. You'll probably hear it stutter a little bit. I remember, of course, as well, it's also part of the wheelie control. You know what? I'm going to have to do it manually, I think. I'm going to have the highest traction control level, or the most sensitive traction control level, with the highest power mode. Let's pull in here, and let's see if we can do that. Right. So what we're going to do, we'll go back down into the rider mode, the rider custom mode. Alright, so let's see here. So KTRC traction control is off. Let's put that. Now, is level 3 the most sensitive or the least sensitive? I can't remember. We'll try on level 1. Because I can never remember which is the higher traction control level and which is the lowest one. But we'll try this one out. Alright, here we go. Okay, that's not kicking in all that much. So I suspect that is probably the least sensitive traction control mode there on the bike. We'll turn it over onto level 3 just to make sure, but you should hear a real stutter, and you'll feel it as well when you're on the power, because the front end of the bike just comes straight back down again even though you've got the throttle open. So let's see if we can pull over again. Right. Okay. 3. Here we go. Yeah, can you hear it? And you can kind of see it on the dashboard there. You get a little light flashing for KTRC, the traction control. So yeah, that's what happens. You really feel it. Let's see if it does it in second gear. Yeah, I did see the light turn on then for a split second. And that's what traction control is there for, really. For those moments. I mean, we got really good road conditions today and the traction control is still kicking in, which is why it makes it a bit of a killjoy for the most part. But yeah, when those road conditions aren't perfect, that's when you can really make use of it. And I absolutely love the fact that a lot of modern bikes these days have got adjustable traction control. So I don't know if all bikes do have adjustable traction control. Maybe it's either on or off on a lot of bikes. I can't remember. But on this bike in particular, you've got so many options these days for power and traction control. I mean, you can seriously cater the riding experience to whatever you want. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love this bike and why I do love its modern tech features. I'm a techie guy. I like to have those features at my disposal. But we'll do it one last time here, because we've got no one behind us. Here we go. Can you feel? Can you hear how many times it kicked in there? But that's what it's there for, guys, and that's why it is an important feature. As much as I don't like it a lot of the time when I'm riding, honestly, from the recent experiences that I've had on this bike in poor road conditions, honestly, I'm gonna think twice before riding without it on next time. So, but there you have it, everyone. That is our explanation on why traction control is important on motorcycles, despite the fact that it might seem like a bit of a killjoy for the most part. But let me know what you think down in the comment section. As I mentioned earlier, let me know if there's been any experiences that you've had on your bikes where traction control has saved you, or something happened to you and you think to yourself, damn, if I had traction control on, or if I had traction control on the bike at the time, that would have really helped me. Let me know your experiences down in the comment section below. As always, leave a like, get subscribed, and we will catch you all in the next video, everyone. Take care, ride safe.